Hello, so today I'm going to be taking you through the whole process of printing and painting this huge and magnificent alien warrior head from Aliens. I'm going to take you through prepping the file for print, some modifications that I made, the construction of it, and then finally the paint job, as well as some of the equipment that I used. But it's worth mentioning that I was new to all this, so if I can build a life-size alien head replica, so can you. Okay, I actually lied to you a second ago. It's not actually full size. I had to shrink it by 7% to get it to fit on my Bambu A1. But we're not going to worry about a few inches, are we? Anyway, let's not obsess about the little things, eh? Let's crack on with the rest of the video. In fact, stay to the end because I've got an idea about how one of you might be able to get your hands on this bad boy yourself. Right, let me show you how to get your hands on this STL itself. Head over to Etsy and find Nero Studios or use the link in the description. There are some great STLs to choose from and I've definitely got my eye on getting the 1979 Alien Big Chap for an upcoming project. They have a pretty cool death claw as well, so I might have a look at that for another video. But the one we want is this guy here. I had a good look through the renders and compared it to screen used Alien Warriors as you can see on screen, and I have to say it's pretty much bang on. This model does actually come with a large neck section too, but I didn't use it as intended for my particular print, but I'll go over that shortly. Also worth mentioning is the fact that the jaw has no floor or back to it, so you'll have to improvise a solution to get the inner jaw to mount somewhere. I'll show you how I tackled that problem next. Now these next steps do require a little bit of knowledge about how to use Blender or other 3D editing program. I'm going to take you a brief overview of what I did, but I'm not going to show you step by step because I'm not the right person to teach you Blender. There's loads of great videos out there that are much better at it than me. The reason being I don't want to take you through absolutely step by step is because you'll soon see that I make more than a couple of really annoying, frustrating mistakes. Steady on, Ripley, that's a bit rude. I'll get my own back on you in a minute. So the first thing I wanted to do was figure out how to fix the jaw to close it off and give something the inner jaw could attach to. So as you can see here, all I did was open it up in Blender and I created a basic plane that I used to fill the space between the two sides of the jaw, and I gave it a little bit of a noisy texture. Then I added this little key to the back which the inner jaw can locate onto. I made sure the inner jaw would fit snug against the back of the mouth by using just a simple boolean to delete the previously squared off back of the tongue. But this is where mistake one came in. You see that when I made the key, I hadn't made the female part bigger than the male part. That meant when it was printed, they wouldn't fit together. And I was buggered if I was going to print off a new one. So I just had to get my craft knife and start hacking off parts of the male protrusion. So with that horrible task complete, I set about getting onto the main part of the head. First off, I wanted to see how many parts I needed to print using the Bambu A1. After a quick YouTube search on how to best cut up large prints, I found out about this program called Luban. I used their generous 30-day trial to get this project done, but then I did end up subscribing for longer too. In Luban, for a big project like this, the first thing you need to do is hollow out the model, otherwise you'll have huge amounts of infill and it will get very costly to print. Luckily, as you can see, this is really easy. Next, you want to cut the model into sections. This is super easy. You can just set your print volume in the top left, add connectors in the bottom left, hopefully ones that will actually fit together this time, unlike my homemade ones. Then click cut. As you can see, there were a few things to figure out. Firstly, it was treating the teeth as their own separate prints and not connected to the top jaw. And they also lifted the height of the sections just that bit too much beyond my print volume. Combine that with the width of the main body just being a touch too big too, that's when I had to make a choice. Go big or go home. But considering I was already at home and the model was too big, I just shrunk it by 7%. But make sure to shrink all the pieces by 7%. You don't want to have anything missized at the end of the day. So with that decision made, I knew that I could print it in half the sections as before. But like all good Englishmen, I still had a problem with my teeth. As it turns out, the teeth were a separate yet grouped part of the main head. So it's pretty easy to separate them and then print them on their own. You just have to head to edit mode in Blender. Press L when you're over the part you wish to isolate, and press P to separate by selection. Pretty easy. However, I then ended up with these extra parts of the root of the teeth, if you like. So I figured I'd just make a simple boolean hole in the gums to allow me to easily fix the teeth back in once printed. And this is when annoying mistake 2 occurred. As those astute viewers, which I presume is all of you, may have guessed, the complex shape of the roots of the teeth, especially the fangs, meant that once printed, the opening was far smaller than the top part of the root. So out came the hacksaw again and the modelling putty. I basically had to rebuild 50% of the gum line. So that's jumping ahead a little bit, so let's get back to prepping the STL for print. So after removing the teeth and shrinking it by 7%, I went back to Luban to see how nicely it would fit on the Bambu A1. Remember to hollow it out at this stage again, just in case you hadn't done it before. And just like before, you go through the cutting process. However, you may notice that it looks like it's going to go over into new cuts just there at the top. This had me going back and forth for ages before I finally gave up and just pressed the cut button. And to my surprise, it actually reworked it all to make 5 perfectly aligned and practical sections to print. So it's over to Bambu Studio. So I was using Bambu Studio as I've only been FDM printing for about 3 months, and I heard that it's really good for beginners. And that's the whole reason I went for the Bambu A1, due to the excellent reviews, mainly around how beginner friendly it is. And my review is? It's bloody brilliant. It's been nearly 100% plug and play for me, so much so that I've not used my resin printer at all since getting it, even for the real detailed projects, because the Bambu can really punch when it comes to small detailed models. And make no mistake, I'm not sponsored by Bambu, I wish I was. It's just my honest, quick, and straight to the point review. So really quickly, just before we set up the main sections to print, I just wanted to say thank you for watching so far, and hopefully you see the potential in this channel like I do. So please support me by subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting, or even donating to my Buy Me a Studio and Buy Me a Coffee link. Any support you do give, no matter how small, will certainly help my channel grow, and it will definitely make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Okay, let's crack on. So all I had to do in Bambu Studio after that was just drag and drop all the parts of the alien head in, auto-arrange them to their own plates, and auto-orient them too. The only thing I would change from the way I printed them is to click this button to make sure supports grow from the plate and not from parts of the model, or to test some other support settings out. I'll show you why. As you can see on this part, the tiny supports were pretty much welded in place. I cannot tell you the difficulty I had getting them off and then making the surface reasonably presentable again afterwards. The final thing I had to do was fill this large gap where the next section should go. And because I wanted it to look more like the core prop Sideshow Collectibles warrior head, I knew I had to think of something. So I thought I'd work with what I had. I simply rotated the next section around, popped it into place, and after a lot of tinkering I ended up with this, which I think works pretty darn well. I especially like how the pipes in the head serendipitously flow with the pipes in the new neck. I sent it to print and all was going well. Until, yep, it's time for annoying mistake number 3. I somehow managed to miss the fact that I hadn't allowed enough room for the jaw to sit properly. And I only found this out when putting it all together for a test. And again, I was damned if I was going to reprint it all. So I figured I'd improvise with the whole hairdryer method, and heated up the PLA enough to bend it away from where the jaw would go. It actually worked a treat. Hairdryers make everything look better. After that, it was onto the construction and finishing. Pretty much self-explanatory really. Sadly, I didn't film it as a YouTube channel wasn't anywhere on my horizon at the time. But you can get the gist of things from these photos. However, this is where annoying mistake number 4, is it now, came about? 4 already, and there's even more to come. You see, I'd bought some P38 filler with a bunch of spray paint and sandpaper, etc. And when I came to fill the gaps on the model, I didn't realise there must have been a hardener in the packaging, which I'd thrown out. And so I was there happily splashing it about all over the place without a care in the world, only to realise, after days of waiting for it to harden, that there must have been something wrong. Cue me frantically and frustratedly scraping it all back off again. After finally using some Holtz knifing putty instead, and leaving that to dry, then sanding it like my life depended on it, I took a risky step. But thankfully, one that paid off. I took all the PPE and safety precautions I could think of, and then set to covering the whole model in resin that was meant for my now slightly redundant Anycubic Mono X4K. I used this tiny handheld UV light to cure it all and painted over the entire model in sections, and really let it flood the areas I'd hacked the supports off to make it look nice and smooth. Okay, this was a bit messy and perhaps not needed, but in my idiotic opinion, it really added a softer, more organic finish to the piece. Perfect for our secreted resin covered Xenomorph friend here. Once cured, I was sure to give it all a good clean over with IPA to get rid of the surface residue. And now finally onto the painting. Well, just before we get onto that actually, here's the main equipment I used. An Iwata Eclipse airbrush, perfect for beginners and intermediates alike. This large but portable spray booth to protect my delicate lungs. The Armour Painter Speedpaint set, with all the colours you need to get going, as well as their Warpaints Air Mega set. All affiliate links are below, and of course I get a small commission on any sales, which is just a bonus to me. I'd still use these items anyway. And now back to the painting, or rather back to annoying mistake number 5, or number 6, or 7, whichever one it is. You see, I thought priming everything in gloss black would be a great idea and add to the final glossy effect I wanted. Oh man, how wrong I was. When painting the tongue, I started to notice that the paint would crack when drying, like the bed of a dried up river, or the cracks in my Feel the Pain smile. Luckily, as you can see in the picture, the cracks actually added an underlying cool level of detail on such a small part as the tongue. It was not the same case with the main head. After dry brushing zenithal highlights and airbrushing a dark brown base coat, the cracks were literally starting to appear, and the finish was starting to look horrible. I have no pics of that because I was too sad at the time, so here's a pic of Ripley's crack instead. But finally, after repainting over it with all matte black, I was back on track. I wanted to make mine look similar to the cool prop Sideshow version. So starting with fresh zenithal highlights, I then airbrushed using hardened wood Speedpaint actually. This made the highlights nice and dark brown, but only enriched the matte black rather than painting over it. And then I went back and forth with lighter and darker shades of brown and skin tones in a scribbled motion to give a mottled layered feel to it overall. And on the sharper details like these sensory pits, I was just very careful to gently build up the transition from the black-brown part of the dome to the light flesh tone right on the edges of the sharp parts. So I just went really slowly and carefully, making sure to angle the airbrush in such a way as to just catch the edges and spray away from the main dome. Lastly, it was just to paint the teeth nice and silvery graphite. Pretty simple. And apart from adding the tendons for the mouth, that was just about it. I still can't decide what to do on the tendons. I didn't think my painting attempt looked very realistic, and I don't really want them permanently glued to the top and bottom jaws. It's also the reason why the thin pipes from the jaw to the midsection haven't been glued on, because just thinking about knowing my look, I would just keep knocking them off and breaking them. I'd ideally like to print the tendons in a sort of semi-transparent rubbery plastic, so it'll look and feel organic right from the printer. Perhaps someone out there will have a good suggestion of what I could do. If so, please let me know in the comments. But for now, I'm calling it job done. So thanks to everybody still here, and if you remember at the start of the video, I did say that somebody might be able to get their hands on this actual model itself. What I'm thinking is, if I get monetized and get 5,000 subscribers, then I'll do some kind of giveaway event where the prize will be this to one of you lucky viewers. And just to make sure, this isn't a giveaway at the moment, this is something for the future. So on that exciting note, I bid you all a fond farewell, as the video is now over. Or as Hudson would say,
that's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the f*** are we gonna do now?
Catch you next time.